there is such a thing as being too early, and there is such a thing as being too late. So the question is, why does this have a chance to scale rapidly and hit that hockey stick of adoption is an important question. Anytime a team tells me there is no competition for what I'm building, I really hope that's not true, because if there is no competition, that might mean there is no market, or perhaps there is a barrier that everybody ran into, but that team just hasn't reached that stage yet. Apart from all the technology that's around experience and community, one opportunity that I'm paying close attention to is the luxury data economy. I always had this use case in mind, and there are teams working on it. You enable the community to co-create with the brand, but of course, even if it's using generative AI, you don't really want them to create something absolutely outlandish, because it might not be useful. Again, it touches on the question of, are you protecting your IP adequately as a luxury brand? But if you can train an AI model on a given brand aesthetics, then you could encourage your community to co-create with you within the brand parameters.
Welcome to Beyond Luxury, where we explore emerging trends and take them one step further. Join us as we redefine the meaning of luxury in today's ever-evolving world. Building on the themes of my book, Beyond Luxury, The Promise of Emotion, we invite thought leaders from fashion, beauty, wellness, travel, hospitality, culture, and tech to share their insights and story. Welcome to part 2. If you haven't caught up with part 1 yet, I highly recommend starting there. It sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. Let's get right back into it. And I like what you were mentioning at the beginning as well, about investing. I think there's a big glam around investing in luxury, in tech for luxury, and all of this space today. You're an investor yourself. You're an advisor to many startups. And you also see startups in their very much beginning incubation modes at early stage at Outlier Ventures. What do you recommend, and what are you looking at when you look into a company you want to invest in, and why do you do that?
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, just to specify, I would say, even though it's super early stage, it's more of an acceleration stage. For incubation, that would mean even putting the teams together. So I usually like to interact with a team that already has their dynamics worked out and perhaps manage to get some level of market validation with what they're building.
Do you mean a type of proof of concept when you say that?
Yes, or it can even be interviews. Essentially, anything that indicates that the need is there to be supported commercially, rather than sitting in a silo and getting excited about something while market might have a totally different opinion. That's why it's so important to get out there early on. I think it's a truism in the startup world that if you're happy with the quality of your MVP, you release too late. Because you need to get out there as soon as possible to understand if maybe you made some assumptions unknowingly that the market might not confirm, that can lead to very costly mistakes. Later stage investors tend to call early stage investors dart throwing monkeys, because there isn't that many metrics you can pay attention to. So I'm a proud dart throwing monkey.
It's important to have people like you, like dart throwing monkeys, I think.
I also really enjoy that being a dart throwing monkey is more about people, even though it's
about the founders.
Exactly. Even though it's all about technology, at the early stage it's very much about the people. And if you have an extremely capable team that works well together and they're working on a terrible idea, it's quite a straightforward process to just encourage them to work on something else, maybe something that is more validated by the market, that matches their capacity. But the other way around, it doesn't work. If you have a terrible team with a great idea, there isn't much you can do. So it's about spotting those teams early on, and also spotting an important aspect of their dynamic. So I was once asked to create a list of red flags for an early stage team. And
Give it to us.
Well, I started listing bullet points, and then I realized I'm actually just talking about one problem. It's just different faces of the same problem. And I call that misalignment of incentives. So the question is, let's say you have a CEO and a CTO. Then it turned out the CTO actually is not part of the company. They're a head of a software house. So the IP of the technology that's being built is with the software house. So there is no really reason to invest in that commercial venture. Another example would be there is a, let's say, CMO, but they don't own any equity in the company. And perhaps they made a deal with the CEO that if they help them raise money, then they will get equity. Well, that means you're essentially pursuing different objectives because the person without the equity will do everything in their power to make it seem like they're successful so they can get to the equity. And it's not because they're lying or anything, it's just because that's how the incentives are aligned. Whereas the CEO, they get a false sense of security thinking that the fundraise is going great until it's not and the money is running low. It might be that somebody brings a romantic partner on board, which is great if it's a married couple of 10 years, because then it's clear that they're a team and they have their dynamics worked out. But if it's a fresh situation, then perhaps matters of heart are best not reflected on your cap table. So it's about making sure that everybody is pursuing the same objectives. It's about understanding if everybody on the team is dedicated to an equal extent. Maybe some people are actually not on it full time and are pursuing it as more of a hobby. You need to be very sensitive to that. It's about the way they communicate. Can they get their vision across to the market? It's also about the timing in that market. There is such a thing as being too early. And there is such a thing as being too late. So the question is, why does this have a chance to scale rapidly and hit that hockey stick of adoption? Is an important question. So we spoke about a scalable business model, but also a clear view on how that business model leads to profitable economics. We've all knew the times of Uber's just pursuing growth at the price of its profitability. In the current economic climate, profitability is what investors look for, or at least clear road to that profitability rather than just growth for the sake of growth. Finally, it's whether they understand their competition. Anytime a team tells me there is no competition for what I'm building, I really hope that's not true, because if there is no competition, that might mean there is no market, or perhaps there is a barrier that everybody ran into, but that team just hasn't reached that stage yet. So I hope there is competition. And usually the competitors are not teams that are doing exactly what you're doing, is every other way of meeting that need. The same way, it's not that Pepsi is the only competitor to Coca-Cola. Any other type of beverage is a competitor to Coca-Cola because it all quenches your thirst.
Got it.
Of digital luxury. Nowadays, the consumer interacting with a luxury brand wants this interaction to go way beyond a transaction. If I just want to buy something, I can do it in my bathtub from my phone using an e-commerce website. But if I am interacting with a luxury brand, I need this to be an immersive experience, preferably one that can be shared in a social context, true to the principles of experiential marketing. So I can signal to my peers that I am aligned with that particular brand through my values of self-expression. And I truly believe the brands that realize that the axis of competition shifted will be the ones who will be successful in that market. Most likely it will be a mix of traditional luxury groups that move quick and iterate quickly, as well as digitally native actors that will manage to create a brand name for themselves.
Fantastic. And looking now forward, what do you see with what you see in trends? Where do you envision luxury and Web3 going? And where do you envision also yourself in that space?
Of course, that's a great question. So apart from all the technology that's around experience and community, one opportunity that I'm paying close attention to is the luxury data economy. Let me give you a good example. I always had this use case in mind, and there are teams working on it, that you enable the community to co-create with the brand. But of course, even if it's using generative AI, you don't really want them to create something absolutely outlandish because it might not be useful. Again, it touches on the question of, are you protecting your IP adequately as a luxury brand? But if you can train an AI model on a given brand aesthetics, then you could encourage your community to co-create with you within the brand parameters.
Right.
And I actually came across a team that offered exactly that. And I was speaking to a very smart technical builder, and I asked him, okay, which data do you train the model on? And he kind of brushed this concern aside. He said, like, data from the internet. So I metaphorically grabbed him by his tongue and I asked, how do you know these are licensed designs? Because if you're not feeding your model with data that originates from licensed designs, essentially you're creating a generative counterfeit that has nothing to do with the brand IP. Even though to an AI model, it just looks the same. It's similar colors, but maybe it's a picture of a knockoff that you were using. So also how we protect that IP ownership, if in a community co-creation, a person is involved into creating something that the brand commercializes, who actually owns that IP? And addressing that question, I think, is a big one. AI verification is very interesting to me. And despite me being a fan of NFC technology, I think AI verification might be the only reliable way for verification of provenance that would work in retrofit, where we established NFC chips might not be the way to go.
Can you describe how AI verification would work?
It would be training a model based on a large database of different aspects of a product, large zoom-ins, essentially creating an verificator model. Nowadays, you can find companies where you pay people that are trained to do so, but that can easily be replaced with AI because in the end of the day, you always pay attention to the same number of parameters. And I think that's one of the use cases where actually, if the AI is correctly trained, the possibility of an error is lower than if being done by a human who can also be tired and maybe the memory is faulty, might have forgotten some examples from the past, whereas with AI, that's not really a problem. So I think AI going hand in hand with blockchain is a new tool for creativity. People often ask if by creating something with the use of AI, is it machine creating or the human is creating? But to me, when it comes to luxury, AI is just a new tool of craft. And if the intention with which you use AI is art, then the output of AI is art. And AI is not creating art here. It's nothing more than a very high-tech version of a paintbrush. Of course, AI is necessary for the scalability of digital design, as we established. And that will play a key role into facilitating the technical side of interoperability while once those incentives are aligned between brands and platforms. There is also a very interesting concept that a lot of people pay attention to, but I haven't seen established players in that space as of yet, to create a holistic, consumer-facing idea to product operating system, where essentially you enable the brand audience to create their own products under the IP flag of a brand. And to put maybe a bit of a futuristic spin on that, I would love if we could use the archival recordings of or writing of Coco Chanel, let's say, and create an avatar that is walking you through that process and has the tone of Coco. And that to me...
She had a very specific voice too, so...
Exactly. But in my eyes, one might compare brands to what in the ancient past was considered deities. A lot of people seem to worship certain brands. We talk about them like they're a person in the room, even though they might have originated from a person, but a lot of those people are no longer around.
Stop everything you're doing. If you love our podcast and are passionate about the future of luxury, don't forget to hit follow. The more followers we have, the bigger guests we can bring on. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. So thank you. I think that what you're mentioning now is very important, and we see this today even with the physical representation of all of the artists that are behind brands. Talking about Chanel, first fashion show right now, and that just passed with Paris Fashion Week. We see the first time ever a fashion week and a fashion show happen without an artistic director at Chanel. And one of the most classical, sublime, beautiful collections that has been done with the codes are so strong at the house that even not having a creative director, the whole studio and métier d'art team was able to produce the most in line with the codes collections that we've seen. And this really is a good parallel to understand that, I mean, Dali and Picasso and all of them didn't have a military behind them that learned everything that they did to become the Picasso group, right? But these fashion designers that have been out there for about 100 to 150 years did. And now they have all of this IP that is not only the IP they created, but the iteration of those IPs that have been gone hand in hand with all of the fashion designers that have been behind that. So looking that into scale, what does that look like? And having an AI model with those codes so clear, ingrained, is something that could very likely make a very scalable way of replicating with those licensing, right? Replicating in the legal licensed IP way to allow brands to go complete other new directions that they never thought of.
I think you're making a great point, particularly about scalability, personalization at scale that translates into individual immersive experience of interacting with the brands. I truly believe is the next frontier of fashion, where you just sit down with digital spirit of the brand, let's say Coco, let's go with our example, and together you create a dress that meets all your requirements and all your needs, incorporates your own ideas, but it's still a Chanel dress.
Right.
That doesn't require you to be a designer yourself or have that skills of craft, but then results in a beautiful dress arriving at your doorstep. And then, let's say your luggage got lost, no worries. If you're on the red carpet, you can project that dress onto yourself as a digital filter because it's all interconnected. And maybe one day you can give that dress to make a girl super happy and give her that dress. Maybe the brand will get some royalties from that. And in the end of the day, she could use it at Fortnite.
Absolutely. Amazing. Blake, thank you so much for walking us through all of these topics of investment, startups, tech, future of digital luxury, digital fashion, and how we can really look into this interoperability, these new sustainable business models, and future worlds that we can live in where luxury can really mean what it means in the next generations to come. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I always appreciate our dynamic because anytime we have a conversation, I also learn a lot from the points you're making. So let's keep that insight exchange going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
For weekly updates on future trends and the latest insights and data on the luxury industry, be sure to follow us on the Beyond Luxury's weekly Substack. Discover our bespoke trend reports and come to us for luxury futures consulting at Beyond Luxury Group.